Okay, good afternoon, friends, and a very warm welcome on behalf of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of
Institute of
Policy
Policy
Research
Research.
and Studies and Department of Political Science of the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda. We are resuming this activity of webinars after a gap of couple of months. This gap was caused by the sad and sudden demise of Sri Sakti Sinha ji, director of the institute, as well as the holidays, the Diwali festival holidays, and several other academic engagements that cropped up in the intervening period. But I'm happy that we are reconnecting online through this medium of webinars or dialogues on contemporary and topical issues. So I look forward to the continuation of this series of webinars and online dialogues, as well as your active participation in the same in the coming events that we will announce through our regular channels. Well, today's topic, that is the increase in the legal age for marriage for women from 18 to 21 years of age, and the implications and the impact of this particular proposal. It is something that has academic relevance, but more importantly, it has a lot of apparent and hidden social implications. We thought that we must have a freewheeling dialogue to understand the multiple dimensions of this particular proposal, which it seems likely in due course will become part of an act, and it will also possibly get reflected in the amendment of several other acts which concern personal matters of Indian citizens. So this whole gamut of issues which have been thrown up by the proposal of the cabinet first, and subsequently now the proposal is before the parliament for consideration and extending committee. I think this gamut of issues requires careful analysis, not necessarily conclusive analysis, because lots of arguments and debates are based on assumptions and apprehensions, not necessarily supported by evidence and data. So we must try to explore and understand the dimensions, nuances, shades of this discussion, for and against, or in between, regarding the increase in the increase in the marriage age for women from 18 to 21 years. Of course, there are variety of interpretations, views on ideal age for marriage. Religions, societies, cultures have different criteria with respect to the ideal age for marriage. And these criteria again are not fixed. They keep changing, they are dynamic. Of course, to put it in a lighter vein, if you ask me what is the ideal age for marriage, I would say no age is ideal for marriage. No matter at what age you marry, you are going to end up with lots of problems. But anyway, this particular aspect is not part of today's discussion. Definitely, we can discuss this aspect sometime later on a different day at a different time, and obviously in a safer environment where we can discuss this issue of if at all there is an ideal age for marriage. But today we are for a serious discussion regarding how this proposal is likely to impact individuals and society in general, more particularly how it is likely to impact family relationships, family dynamics, women's well-being, and man-woman relationship also in marriage, outside marriage, and larger relationship between state, culture, and society. So with this objective in mind, we thought let us have a focused conversation on this issue, and we have the privilege of having two erudite academics with us who have already applied their mind to this issue, and certainly they will facilitate us, particularly the students, in making better sense of this proposal, so that as the next steps for its enactment and legislation are taken, we are able to understand the nuances and implications better. We have with us Professor Ranjita Chakrabarty. She is at present professor, and formerly she was also the head of the Department of Political Science at the North Bengal University, which is located in Siliguri. Her areas of interest and expertise include gender studies, public administration and public policy, society and politics of Bengal, Indian government and politics, and so on. She has published widely in edited books as well as in professional journals, nationally and internationally, on these issues. She has also been a team member of UN-funded projects on human trafficking, as well as preparation of district-level development reports, human development reports in Bengal. She has also been part of several civil society activities and initiatives aimed at women's empowerment and also the welfare of the deprived sections in the areas which are located around our place of residence. So we are very happy to have Professor Ranjita Chakrabarty with us. Welcome, madam. And thank you so much for sparing your time for our webinar and agreeing to share your views on this particular issue. I am also joined happily by my young colleague from the Department of Sociology at the MS University of Baroda, Dr. Virendra Singh, whom, as we all know, who has been actually a very active member of the teaching fraternity at MS University, holding various administrative positions like warden, dean of sports, also part of the Office of International Affairs, and so on. But more importantly, he is a very sound academic in the field of sociology, as evidenced by the fact that he has been granted 4 patents for his research work. We always used to wonder how can social sciences have patents. We always thought that it is science and technology where patents are granted. But he has broken this myth and obtained 4 patents for his research in the field of sociology. He is part of several regional and national level sociological associations and activities, and also published widely in journals and participated in seminars. So welcome, Dr. Virendra, and thank you on the behalf of
Thank
the
you, sir.
Institute. I have a slightly bad throat, so bear with me in case I cough in between. It's not Corona or Omicron, don't worry. So let me straight away begin by asking this question to Professor Ranjita. Can you elaborate and throw some light on the background of this proposal? That how this proposal of increasing the age of marriage for women, how did it come about? What is its conceptual genesis? How the policy evolution took place? Over to you, Professor Chakraborty.
Thank you. Uh, First of all, thank you, Professor Dulakia, and your institute and your university for inviting me to this uh, conversation. Now, first of all, if we look at it, this was not something new, or this demand that had come, or the kind of a proposal that had come. Now, if we look back in history, then it is probably the two debates, that is, one is the age of consent that came in 1891 act, and in 1929 the child marriage restraint act that was passed by the imperial legislature, that needs to be looked into. Of course, when you look at the age of consent debate, it had a different kind of color. Compared to that, the child marriage restraint act of 1929 had a bigger, or a rather a larger kind of a discussion and a debate, whereby it was kind of consent. There were a lot of discussions, and the main purpose was to protect the girl child by raising the age of marriage. Basically, the principle of protection of the girl child was there. Now, two things were important. This particular act is called the Sarda Act, known by the name of the person, Harbilas Sarda, who had initiated it. And he had certain Arya Samajist leanings, and he was the one who had initiated. And there was a lot of debate on it, that whether we should have such kind of an act or not, because it was actually trying to meddle with the religious affairs, and the British government really didn't want to do it. But then there was another important event, that in 1927 the publication of Catherine Mayo's book Mother India, where actually this point was raised about that the system of child marriage that was there. Now, it was not that it was only there in India, it was also there in other parts of the world. And the Congress led by Gandhiji was kind of they were also talking in terms of raising, because he was also talking about the problems of the Hindu widows, because there were a lot of child widows in India. Although there was an act which tried to protect, that is the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act of 1856, but we do not really see much of a change. So what we saw was that subsequently this act was passed in 1929, but when you look at the census of India of 1931, then you find that the numbers, instead of reducing, had increased. Now the question was why it increased. Now, interesting fact is that this particular event was marked by another interesting point, that is the All India Women's Conference, Women's Indian Association, and National Council of Women in India. All these three organizations actually sent a petition asking for a passing of such an act. Although the British government was very cautious with this, they didn't want to create any problem, and so what they did was they set up a committee which is known as the Joshi Committee. And in this Joshi Committee, the Women's Association had put down a petition. Interestingly, the Muslim women also, they also collected a petition, and then they also placed it before them. Now that is what happens before independence. Post independence, the age of marriage was reached. Now at that point of time, the Sarda Act made it 14 for girls and 18 for boys. Subsequently, 1949, excuse me, 1949, we are seeing that the age of marriage is getting raised to 15 years for girls. And in 1978, we are seeing the present one that is seen, that is 18 years for girls and 21 years for boys. And that is also something that we see in the Hindu code, Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. But in the other personal laws, there are certain kind of, although the Special Marriage Act also keeps it like that, but in the personal laws there are variations. Now when we come to this issue, then we find that all over the world there is more or less 18 years is the age of marriage. But the SDG has pointed out, that is the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 5, it talks about eradication of child marriage by 2030. Now, this is the background to the setting up of the committee, the Jaya Jetli committee, that sat down to look into, because child marriage was not something that was just a social malpractice, but it had other ramifications in the form of infant mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, lack of nutrition, lack of empowerment of women, women not getting education. So all these issues were there. And so Jaya Jetli committee sat down with this proposal to look into the correlation between the age of marriage with the issues that I just now mentioned. Now, it was not just for population control, they were also talking in terms of gender parity, that is reducing the gender gap. So boys have the age of marriage as 21, so it should also be, or by applying this equality principle, it would be 21. So this was followed by, actually this was, the groundwork was set by a kind of a survey that was done in 15 universities. And these university students, they collected the data, as well as some NGOs were also there, 15 NGOs were there, which actually collected the data. And on that data, basis of the data analysis, this was suggested that 21 years of marriage should be set as the basis for ensuring the rights of women, and also looking at the women's empowerment. Yes, that is the actually the historical background that we see to this whole debate coming up. Sir, I think your mic is off.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ranjita. And let me add a trivia to this particular historical aspect, that in Baroda state, Raja Sayajirao Gaikwad, about a century back, the legal age of marriage for women was 10 years. For boys, it was 12 years.
Yes.
Then he raised it to 12 years and 14 years. But even then, there was a lot of resistance from conservative elements, that why are you raising the age of marriage for women from 10 years to 12 years? Now, just to indicate how far we have come during the last century, from 10 years to 21 years. It took a century to really travel this path. Well, broadly, you have highlighted the background. Now, very specifically, and briefly, can you look at the pro side of this proposal? That what exactly is the rationale? What are the benefits of increasing the age of marriage for women?
Yeah.
Specifically.
Actually, if you raise the age of marriage, then it is pointed out that it would give them a latitude or a space for getting higher education, access to education. They can also develop their skills. They can be more economically empowered, and they can make informed choices, not just about how they would want to, what kind of a partner they would want to have, what kind of and they can also make informed choices about marriage. Because it's not just about marriage, but there is also another problem of exiting from marriage. Because in many child marriages, you would find that if there is a child marriage, then if the marriage is an abusive one, there is a problem of exiting from marriage, that is coming out of that marriage, as has been pointed out by many grassroots level organization. In fact, there is a report also whereby you would see that the grassroots level organization, its report is on this Child Marriage Prohibition Act of 2006. Now, this Act of 2006, it came, and we were the grassroots level organizations and the other partners. That is, it is called PLD now, partners in law and development. Now they have come out with a report which in 2019 it shows that although we are having a lot of such kind of laws, but then when you look at reality, it is not happening, or rather you are not seeing that it is reducing. Although NFHS survey shows that there has been a reduction, we have come down. If you look at the last or the before one, that it was 47%, then we came to 27%, now it is 23%. But it is said that the problem lies with exiting from marriage. That is also like, if you do not have information, if you do not have education, then you cannot actually make choices about how you would want to live your life.
Okay, thank you. Now let me come to Dr. Virendra. Can you, as a sociologist, throw some light on the recent trends of marriage with respect to age? I mean, the correlation between marriage and age. What are the sociological observations with respect to the correlation between marriage and age in India, particularly the recent trends in this regard? Over to you, Dr. Virendra.
Right, sir. I think majorly the points which were supposed to be discussed with regard to these recent trends, that is with the Sharda Act, then the other acts which were there, they are being discussed by Madam Ranjita. And whenever we talk about the trends, especially the word that comes with a trend, and when we look at the institutionalization of the trends, when we say a practice is being institutionalized, so it takes around 5-10 years when a practice gets institutionalized. And when we look at the social institutions getting institutionalized, then that means it is going to take a lot more. Could be considered to have a check of around 6 decades, 10 decades, then only we'll be able to see what are the changes which are being there in the society. Otherwise, it will be just a fashion fade, which we are monitoring. So when I look at it, what I have seen with different sources that I have reviewed, in one of the book of Ram Ahuja, that is on the Indian social institutions, it mentions about these recent trends. What they say is the various sociological studies conducted in last few decades have revealed that the trend in the age at marriage from 1930 onwards shows a continuous rise. So it is nothing new. It is from 1930s we are seeing that they are continuously rising. Definitely we can say the Act of 1929, the Act of 1954, but socially also the acceptance are there with regard to the kind of life chances that the girls have seen or received when their mothers got educated, when their mother's age was at a marriage was higher. So accordingly these trends were being set. It was not only by the law, but sociological perspective will say it is the socially acceptance which is being monitored over here. Few of the studies, like the study of the Katie Merchant, the study of 3 generational, that is when the grandfather is there, what was the age at marriage, then father's age, then so these longitudinal studies were also being conducted. The study of the K.M. Kapadia on the marriage at age, that was also being conducted. And looking at all these, what they have suggested that the reason behind these changing trend is education is an important reason for the late marriage. That is the one. And second, the data from the National Sample Survey report also shows that today there is a generally a tendency to post-puberty marriages both in rural and the urban area. So it was not only with the law, it was acceptance of the society which shows it. One interesting study of a canon is there that was being done in 1963. Study of 250 cases of inter-caste and inter-community marriages in Bombay, which revealed the average marriage age of a girl was, that is in 1961, girl was 22.4 years, and for boys it was 27.5 years. What was the reason? This study shows that given freedom of choosing one's own mate, deciding when to marry, the tendency is toward enhancement of age in the present generation. So these are the same trends which are moving irrespective of law which is coming, because even currently what is being proposed in the report, it clearly mentions we have to look at the social acceptance. It should not be done just like you are criminalizing people. The concept of marriage, the age of marriage, was never to criminalize anybody, because when I was reviewing the literature, I saw many of the criticisms that you are going to criminalize the major sector, especially SC, ST, or the marginalized community, which has never been part of social laws. In the social laws, we normally give time, we give chance for the awareness, and hardly 500 cases are being registered under such kind of a acts or implementation law. Now coming to the causes, the several cause behind these trends, what the sociology understand, they have mentioned about it around 8 causes they have given for the changing trend, that is the rise in the age of marriage. So the first is the control of 1929 and 1955 Act. It is only one out of 8. Then the second comes is a spread of education, particularly among the females. Third comes the necessity of the completing specialized education for getting jobs. So the job hunger is also over there. Then fourth is freedom to boys and girls in mate selection, as we have seen the study of a Bombay. Then change in a joint structure of a family and shouldering responsibility of economically supporting one's wife and children. That is with regard to the nuclear family, which moved from joint family system. So basically, we have not moved from joint family to nuclear family. It is a joint family setup to the nuclear family setup, because still we are having all the kind of a celebration going together. Then the sixth one is desire to control size of a family and rising the living standards. The seventh is change in the object of marriage from dharma to companionship. And the last one, beside these factors, the most important one, which has brought the change in the age of marriage, is the realization of dysfunctional aspect of the child marriage. As Madam Ranjita said, the kind of a malnutrition problem, the problem of anemia with regard to the women who is getting pregnant, as well as the child who is going to be the newborn. So all these things, when looked at, we consider them to be the dysfunctional aspect of the child marriage. So these are the recent trends which shows that the age of a marriage is continuously changing from last 10 decades. Sir, you have to unmute yourself.
This technology, I mean, still keeps us. Anyway, what I was saying, this is an interesting information that you gave, that despite these laws in existence for so many decades, the number of cases registered is very small.
Right, sir.
And that also indicates the state society relationship dynamics. Well, of course, the National Family Health Survey says that around 23%, if I'm not wrong, of marriages in India are still below the age of 18 for women. And that means that 23% of the marriages in India are actually unlawful or illegal, if we may interpret it like this. But as you rightly said, society cannot really be changed mainly through law. Law is only a subsidiary tool in the process of social change, and there are better avenues to accelerate the pace of reform and change with respect to personal and family matters. Now, this particular proposal also has done something radical, and that is making age of marriage gender neutral. It has equalized the age of marriage for boys and girls. As they say, why should boys have all the fun? So let
Right.
women also have 3 more years of being unmarried, you see, till the age of 21. And this equalization of age of marriage for men and women, how do you look at it? What kind of implications and impact do you see of this equalization of marriage age for men and women? The 3-year difference now vanishes.
Right, sir. Sir, I take it very positively, because not as per the law, as correctly mentioned by you also, and as the sociological perspective says, laws can't change everything. because as soon as the law comes, it directly get published, it go to the libraries, and until unless it is uh, impacting the society, it will never be known to the people. Just like these child marriages, they were there, the laws were there. It is just because today the increase is there. We have started having a discussion on it. We try to understand what is voidable, what is by void. We make a statement like these are illegal marriages, but actually these are not illegal marriages which are below 21 or below 18. They are voidable only in a condition when somebody files a case. If nobody is filing cases, police is never going, or the departments are never visiting them, that you are not supposed to do it. These kind of a plan normally goes with the awareness plans. Now when I look at the equality, then I definitely positively look at that both the girl as well as boy, they are being capped on 21 year of age. And sociologically, when I see, earlier the gap was of 18 and 21, 3 years. So it is a kind of a hypergamous thought process that we have in our mind. Hypergamy is when a boy is of a higher class than a girl. Even when we look at a girl who is going to be the bride, we'll consider वो हमसे थोड़ा सा नीचे status में हो, so that she is going to adjust. We make a statement, she is going to get adjust. It is not adjust, it is basically obey. So that she is going to come in my house, she is going to obey me. Me means the husband, father-in-law, mother-in-law. The only reason is that 18 year means she is going to be younger in age. So hypergamous, if I look at it, then I'll consider just to make her obey, you are considering her age to be lower. If you have not kept these kind of a point in your mind, you will always consider them to be of a equal age, equal economic status. Even we look at it, her salary should be lower than the husband's salary. In the similar way, many of the other aspects, social aspects, we are going to compare. She should be of a lower. So I use the word class, so that she is going to obey me. When I'm making it equal, it means actually I am somewhere breaking this ice. I am trying to make them equal. Socially, I'm trying to provide them equal status. Also, one very, very important point is there when globally, especially with this regard to this talk, when I was reviewing the literature, I found the Marriageable Act that was on a Wikipedia. With the Marriageable Act, they have mentioned all the age group for whole of the world. All the countries were being mentioned over there. And when I saw it, all the countries, majorly all the countries of this globe, they have three categories: without parental or judicial consent, for male or female, both different. Then second will be with parental consent, and then with judicial consent. Judicial consent is going to be where you want to marry even at the age of 14. If judicially consent is there, you will be able to go for that marriage. Slightly higher, at the age of 15 or 16, you want to marry, you can take a parental consent. Then without parental or judicial consent, they have age of around 18 or 19. In case of India, we doesn't have such kind of a differences. We have only one, that is without parental or judicial consent. It means we are going to have an age where we are actually empowering our youth. And now even the girls, part of a youth, that even they are going to have, they doesn't require to have any kind of a consent of a parent or a judiciary when they attain age of 21. So I'll take it positively as a point of empowerment for them, a kind of a freedom that they will receive. So this is how I look at it, sir.
Thank you, Virendra. And I will reconnect with Dr. Ranjita on the point that he briefly referred to, that is about the global scenario in terms
Yes,
of age of marriage.
before that, I would just want to add something. That is, if you look at child marriage, you can say that diagnostically it is a kind of what you see in front, but at the back, behind it, the reasons that why child marriage actually happens, there are multiple reasons which needs to be addressed as well, like raising an age. And as he rightly said, that police will not come into the picture because very often it is also controlled by the communities. Now, as if there is a community acceptance and a community clearance for it, then police also, who are also a part of the system, they would not come and interfere. The administration would also not touch the case. Okay, if there is no complaint given from the child. Now, but again, the girls would not want to come because there is a problem that the police might harass their parents, which they don't want. Now, when you look at these reasons behind the marriages, these child marriages, then you would find that there is the most important thing is that it is one is poverty, definitely. That in one of the studies that we conducted, in fact, in 2005, but I guess the same reasons remain when you look around, whether it is in the rural areas or in the poorer regions of the urban areas, you would find that it is the poor people who would actually think of so that their dowry demand is less. There is a correlation between young girls getting married off and the dowry that would be demanded. Higher the age of the girl, there would be more dowry required for marriage, and so probably there is some kind of a connection that was found. Secondly, the limited economic choices. Now, often it is seen that those girls who are not able to clear their exams in school, then they stop studying, they become dropouts. So often the next best option, in because they don't have any other option, in the sense that they do not have adequate skill or economic choices, then the next best option is to go for or get them married off. So there is also this connection that dropouts and marriage, child marriage, that is the girls who cannot complete education or they do not feel themselves interested, and there is no other economic opportunities available, livelihood choices available, so they are often married off because the reduce the number of mouths to be fed. And we are also looking at this, that we need to make a distinction between child marriage and child-led marriage. Now, child marriage is where the parents are giving the child marriage, and child-led marriage is something that where the child may engage in some kind of a relationship and may run away or elope and get married. Now, how do we look at it? So very often it has been found that once they are caught or there is some action, then they are brought back and the child refuses to go home and rather would go to the shelter home and then come back when once the child attains adulthood, would go back to the person whom he or she has got married to. Now, this is something that needs to be also looked at. I think Dr. Singh would be very would be the right person to also look into that. The kind of images that we have in the films, the kind of images that we have in the media, that what is, do we have models which give us alternative pictures, that is where we find women who are professionally successful and they are doing something, ambitious women, and what is the TRP ratings of these kind of images that are given to us, whether people like to see them, or we would like to see, as he said very rightly, that hypergamous things, or poor lady going and marrying a rich boy. So these fairy tale kind of pictures still there, or the kind of, you would see the messages coming out that the moment you attain teen, that is 15 years, 16 years, you are having these romantic dreams and you are having a kind of a very beautiful world where there is only these songs. As I tell my students, that when economics comes knocking at your doors, then all these songs and literature flies out of the window and the harsh reality is there and you have nothing to do. So this is something I think we need to explore as well, that just with the law, by saying that 21 years is your age of marriage, are we not going to look, or are we not in a position, we should be interrogating these things as well, that it is not just the social acceptance, but also how do we also remodel, refashion our images around, whereby we give alternatives to the children and also agree to the fact that the adolescents have also a certain amount of rights. With even the Convention on the Rights to Children, they agree, that is their right to have certain their kind of sexual choices that they make. So even if it is a taboo when we talk about it, we don't want to talk about it, but we have to agree in the sense that we cannot just put it under the carpet and say that no, we don't have all such issues. If we do have such issues, we do have, even many sociological studies have indicated that yes, our children are quite mature, and if we give them, and very often the problems emerge from a fear, from lack of knowledge, and also how will I place it in front of the society, and also a kind of criminalizing. So if we could also do something, or what can be done to bring in a kind of a change in our attitudes, in a change in the way we train our children to see the world.
That's an interesting point, I think. But very briefly, I would also like you to add to what
Yes.
Dr. Viren is saying with respect to the global picture. Exactly how other societies are fixing their norms with respect to the age of marriage,
Yes.
the appropriate age for marriage, the legal age of marriage.
Actually, Dr. Singh has already covered it, in the sense that there are these three categories. That is, law is there, and then there is this parental consent and judicial consent, that is judicial authorization. But in most of the countries, you see that it is 18. Whereas in the League of Nations, a move was made in order to contain traffic of women, that the age of consent should be 21 years, so that there is less of sexual slavery that was correlated with sexual slavery. Subsequently, even Gandhiji at one point, when he was talking about the lot of the child widows, he was asking or talking about that women should think of fixing the marriage age at 21, or rather there should be this we should do away with child marriage, and we should raise the age of marriage. Now my problem is, there will be kind of questions, or maybe we can take it, we may not call it politically, but the question of that, when you consider a person to be adult, when the person is able to vote, so is an adult citizen, is the age of 18, and then when you fix the marriage at the age of 21, how do we look at this? How do we justify that this is you have to think it this way, that age of 21 is okay? But right now I have one image in my mind, that as a child I saw there was this population policy going on, and also talking about this eradication of child marriage in the television those days. There was an advertisement which showed a pot which was not totally burnt, and it was not proper. It was a kacha pot, and water was poured into that kacha pot, and the pot breaks up. And it is said that if you do not allow the girl child to develop mentally, physically, and you give her in marriage, the same thing would happen. She would lose her life, and she would not be able to become an empowered individual. So how can we bring again this kind of, and we are able to look at or address this question? This question would definitely, I feel, would arise, that when I have been given the right to vote as an adult, when I'm at the age of 18, and then you are fixing my age of marriage at 21, then what do I do? Because when you look at the reports, you find that below 15, very few people. Of course, there are there. Pandemic will give you a different picture post-pandemic. Now, if you do a survey, I know you will get a higher number of child marriages. But the main is 15 to 19 is the point when you have more marriages. But now you are not going to have that. So if we raise the age of marriage, then what do we do with it? How do we look at it?
Definitely, these are issues which only future will be able to answer, because in my view, most of the apprehensions that have been raised are concerning the implementation of this proposal.
Yes.
But before I come down to the implementation part, let me go back to Virendra again and ask him, is there a correlation between age of marriage and divorce? There are studies which point this out. What's your take on it?
Yes, sir. Before going to this particular dimension of the correlation of age at marriage and a divorce, I would like to put more light on the word consent, because it is a legal word. Consent, willingness, presumption, assumption. They have completely different meanings. They are not at all opposite or something. They have a legal meaning. And age at marriage has nothing to do with the consent to have sex. So 18 is the age of consent, and the age of marriage is 21. And age of marriage, many people will make a statement, it is not acceptable in our society, but the fact is it is. That is why the live-in relations have entered into our country also. Whereas Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court had made some kind of a points where more than 3 years, if you are staying with your partner, then you will get all kind of a rights that a wife is having. But with regard to consent, this committee has very clearly in their report mentioned that there will be no change, or we are not recommending any change with regard to consent. It is only the change of the age at marriage, which will be 21, because of the kind of a responsibilities that you have to take, and more about the sociological perspective that I'll put forward. But the consent is not supposed to be getting confused with the age of marriage. Now, with regard to the correlation of a divorce and the age at marriage, again, one of the review that I have made, and in that review, I have seen when the age of marriage is higher, then the divorce rate is lower. So, if I look at the data which is available with me, uh, under the age of 17 years, if male is there, the divorce rate is 45%, and that is for male and female both. When I look at it at 25 years, it is 12% only. At 21, I look at it, then 15% of a male and 12.5% of a females are asking for divorce. And for 40 and above, it is going to be very minimal, that is 10% or 9% divorce only. So again, if I go from 18 to 21, I think the check on a divorce rate could be done. The reason behind that check will be, again, that is the kind of understanding they are going to have the report or the study that I mentioned earlier of the Bombay, that when you get a chance to have your mate selection that is at a higher age, then definitely the chance of divorces are going to get lower. So the correlation is basically that the age of marriage is higher, the divorce rate is lower.
And it's quite understandable that you are more mature to handle the stresses that inevitably come with a marriage if you are above 21 or 25. And I also read that in US, the probability of divorce is the least if you marry at the age of 29. They have said that 29 or 30, those who marry at the age of 29 or 30, they have minimum of divorces as
Right.
compared to the couples who marry early. Anyway, we are not suggesting anything. There are a lot of young people in the audience, and they can have their choices and their consent also, which is legally available. As you rightly say, age of marriage and age of consent are different. And this is an explosive situation that is going to develop now. Let's wait how it pans out. Coming down to another slightly intriguing development. I always thought that this equalization of age of marriage between men and women and raising the age of marriage to 21 would be seen as a very welcome development by women's activists, women's rights activists, and social activists or feminists. We have seen in the media commentaries during the last 15 days or so, and even earlier, that some of them are actually in the forefront criticizing this decision and asking that no, this 18 and 21 years is perfect and fine. Don't change it. It's going to be very bad. It's going whatever. Now, this is something really very, very puzzling. And we don't know whether this resistance is motivated by genuine arguments or it is based on some other assumptions and other issues. I would go back to Dr. Ankita, Professor Ankita, to reflect upon it. So how do you see this particular
Uh,
paradox of women's rights activists opposing the decision to raise the age of marriage?
Okay, actually, they are of the opinion that if you look at the Jaya Jetli committee, then the committee had pointed out that basically the reasons behind child marriage are this: access to education is not there, then livelihood opportunities are not there, then transportation to these educational units or institutions should be created, skill and business training should be done, sex education in schools should be taken up before you actually start with a law. argument is, before you go for a law, better to create the infrastructure, the structural inequalities that exist, and thereafter you can hit at the law. Because if you see, there was this law, Child Marriage Prohibition Act is there, then you have set up these laws whereby 18 and 21, but still you see the prevalence of child marriage, although you see that again there has been a reduction, as we saw in the NFHS survey report 4, where it is 27% and now it is 23%. Now, it is also pointed out that girls drop out because they have no access to higher education, number one. And number two, it is that they don't have the support system. Now, the argument is that, yes, there are many programs in different states where the girls have been provided support in the form of like giving them bicycles. Say, for example, in our state, in West Bengal, we do have a program whereby, and even there is this central program that is Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao programs, which actually support women to take have access to higher education. And secondly, it is being pointed out that this would lead to criminalization, because there will be many lawbreakers, because it is customary in many places to get their daughters married off. Now, as I said earlier also, that if you have alternative models, I don't think so women would want to get married, or boys would want to get married and enter into this whole world of responsibilities, and they would rather prefer to remain, or they would want to empower themselves if given opportunities. So I guess opportunities need to be created, and there is as it is said that it is not looking at the real issues, and this raising of marriage will not work. But I think as not looking at it in a coercive manner, but talking about creating social changes so that there is more social acceptance, and there is more empowerment of the individuals to become self-reliant, that would solve the purpose rather than criticizing it. Because one way it is, of course, these are all doubts that raising 21 will not give us any benefit. Rather, we will not look into it, and the state will not look into the other aspects of, say, what are the reasons behind poverty, behind this child marriage, like poverty or economic opportunities, livelihood opportunities, or taking up the case of education in schools only about reproductive health. But if these things, these policies are also there, these are also there, which can be, if we can incentivize the whole thing, that if you do not go, like, for example, there are many cases, in fact, in my state also, I found that there were many reportings about child marriage. And even recently in Rajasthan only, there was a case where the boy called up the authorities saying that there was child marriage. So it shows that awareness has come in, and the children also want to get some empowerment. They want to become empowered, and these doubts may be cleared in the sense that how these programs can be converged, the various programs that are there, that can be converged or given a reshape to implement. So in the implementation part, if it is a kind of the support system or whatever apprehensions are there, that is taken care of, I don't think so there is any need. Because interestingly, in the Sarda Act, when the Sarda Act was done, the women's groups, they only petitioned, they wanted that there should be the raising, or the marriage should be raised. Now, another argument is there, that we are all basing our arguments from the perspective of harm principle, how to protect our children, how to protect our girl children, so we raise the age. But it is also a matter of how do you also give the space for women to empower themselves, to become self-reliant. You can also take it in this positive way, and also pressurize the governments to do the needful, so that the opportunities are created, so that given the space to empower themselves. So instead of focusing our argument at this part, I would rather shift my attention to this, that how we can make the government or pressurize the government to also look into these parts, whereby these support structures are created and structural inequalities are addressed.
Quite right. I also fully agree with you that some of these criticisms made by as I said, the pro-women groups during the last few days don't seem to be too convincing. And same arguments were raised whenever such socially progressive legislations or enactments were done, like untouchability of abolition of untouchability. Same arguments were made that oh, it's not going to work. First, let's create awareness. Let's create some other systems. And polygamy was abolished. Again, same arguments. First, let's make people aware. Let's educate them. Let's do something else. And then, at the end of the whole process, then we should pass a law. Policies always, I think, set a benchmark. Yes, even if everything is not implemented, or even if it is not implemented everywhere in true spirit, fine. At least as a benchmark, it exists, and it is going to slowly push society to look beyond the conventional criteria of marriage. Dr. Virendra, you hail from Rajasthan, and definitely you have a greater insight into Rajasthan society than any one of us present here. It might be a wrong assumption. Rajasthan sometimes is singled out as one state where child marriage problem is endemic. How do you see the implications and impact of this particular proposal, if it becomes a law, on Rajasthan's society and social dynamics?
Sir, first thing, with regard to the kind of criticisms which are coming on for this new legislation or this new proposal, so they are making a statement like criminalization. So again, it is not about the criminalization, it is about the deviant behavior which is going to increase. So they have to understand difference between getting criminalized and to be deviant. If I am being fined by traffic police, I am not a criminal. It was my deviant behavior because of which I got that fine to be paid. In the similar way, as I said, in the social laws, to be criminalized, such kind of act hardly comes. And as I mentioned, that only 500 or 600 cases were being registered for last few of the decades with these new laws. So in the similar way, these laws are going to move with some kind of a social awareness. And in sociology, we have one statement: everything is right somewhere, sometime, but not everywhere, every time. So with regard to the kind of a demography India is having, few of the researches are already available which says that every state is having different kind of a demography with regard to the different kind of a culture, different kind of a traditions, and it is very hard to change them immediately. As I started with the reading of this particular new legislation or the report which was being submitted, even I was doubtful with regard to the cases of Rajasthan as well as many of the other conservative communities which are there. But when deeply I have gone through this report, I found that almost everything is being answered by this committee. There is nothing which could be criticized. Even when respected Chittambaramji spoke about the awareness program, when I saw the report, in the report it was already been mentioned that a massive awareness program has to be launched. It is going to be the same case for Rajasthan also. When you are going to have awareness programs, things will get different picture. If I look at the child marriage as well as the pre-puberty marriages, Rajasthan as well as the Bimaru Pradesh, they are being considered to be at a higher rate, but they are just being assumptions that they are being considered. In one of the report I saw, West Bengal is worst in this condition, especially with regard to the child marriages in current scenario. So the things are different in different mind. In Rajasthan, if I look the kind of a changes which are going to come, definitely they will be accepted by the people. Again, the question will be rural or urban. So it will be the urban people who are going to accept it first. In the rural, they have a problem, that is with regard to the availability and the accessibility. Whenever you are going to ask any family that the age of marriage has been increased and now you marry your daughter at 21, they are going to have a question in their mind. At 15, we were planning, but we were having a school of a standard 8. Then we got a school of 10th standard till 10th, then 12th. So we were okay with the age of 16 or 17 or 18, by which currently they are having a marriages of their daughters. Now you are increasing it to 21. what my daughter is going to do staying at the village. Because availability, you are going to make statement, we have so many IIMs, we have so many universities, colleges, but their accessibility is not available at their doorstep. And they always have a fear, if my daughter is going to be sent for any of the college study or higher education in the other state or other city, urban areas, she may get into the affairs and which won't be accepted by the society. That is a fear in the mind of a people, especially in the rural part of Rajasthan. I can consider, as I'm coming from that area, this is the very first thing that comes in their mind. For 3 years, we won't be able to send our daughter away from us. In the urban areas, they will accept it, but in the rural area, as mentioned in the report, we have to work a lot on the awareness. The same as a case I can put of the Sabarimala case. In the Sabarimala, the honorable judges were there from the Supreme Court. 5 people were there. Honorable Judge Deepak Mishra was there. Then Chandrachud Singh was there. Then one more lady was there, Indu Malhotra. And when I saw that law was coming, out of the 5 judges, 4 were having a consent for this particular entry of a women's in the temple. Honorable Indu Malhotra put a dissent on that. So whenever the law is coming, we have to understand, is it an empirical or a normative one? That is just written in a books and you are implementing it, then it won't be of any use. So this law is coming, it is going to have an empirical approach, and with that empirical approach, I think it will be accepted in all the part of India.
Absolutely right. I mean, whether it is politics or law, everything is culturally conditioned and culturally determined, and therefore normatively embedded. So as values change, as cultures change, over a period of time, we will also see changes reflected in the policy frames as well as in the legal frames. My last question to both of you, and then we will have interactions if participants have any questions to raise or any comments to make. How would you look at the future challenges and issues with respect to the unfoldment of this proposal? And it seems that it is likely to pass on, if not sooner, then definitely in the coming couple of years. How would you suggest the future path with respect to the implementation of this proposal, the challenges, issues? First, I would go to Professor Ranjita.
Definitely there would be challenges, but again I think there would be not much challenge also. It would be a law, it would be passed. As we had the other acts, it would also be an act, and people would continue to do what they had been doing, because again we have not looked into the structural inequalities until and unless there is a change in those structural inequalities that exist, and we address the question of equity. We cannot really bring a change. How do we look at a poor man who during the pandemic, this was very important. Excuse me. If you see, there are a lot of child marriages during pandemic. Excuse me. Although we found that there were these girls were going to school, but they weren't during these 2 years. Many of the when once the schools opened, the teachers were finding that even the first girl, she was also not attending. And once they went, tried to find out, they found out that the girl is married, or she has been married off, because their parents found a better groom for the daughter, and the daughter was married off. Although there were some incentives for sending her to school. Now, this image that, or understanding that if my girl is not doing anything, let her get married off before she does something, as Dr. Singh rightly pointed out, that I cannot let my daughter go out and study. There is a kind of a fear that my daughter will go out of my hand and I will have some problems later on. So there is a fear of sending the girl outside for education. So we have to look at the fact that 2-3 things are necessary. One, answering the questions that what will the girl do? Say if she is not good in studies, and she's unable to complete her basic education, say class 8, after that clearing boards, then she should have some livelihood opportunities. There should be some creation of skill development institutes or centers whereby, because this is not a problem of the urban middle class or the upper middle class, but it is going to be a problem that would be found in usually the poorer regions, where you find people who are educationally backward, means they are not able to score high, and they find that they won't be able to compete, say in competitive exams in other places. So what do? Alternative is get the daughter married off. But if the daughter has a chance or given a chance to increase her skill and have some livelihood, and these are also shown the positive impact of attaining a kind of age whereby she is able to make better choices. She is also having the right to take her the own decisions about her own life. Both ways, the parents would also see that she is doing something. Economically she is better off. Secondly, she is also having a chance to decide, and she would also individually, she would see that she is in a better position, and she is able to give back better to the family, because an educated mother would definitely be an asset to the family than an uneducated mother. So that way I think we need to look into this, that this part of the point, that not just this traditional education, school education, we must also think about vocational education, which should be strengthened. Number two,
Absolutely.
the security aspect. Security aspect is very important, because very often parents fear about the security of their daughters. When they are going out to work, they cannot leave their daughters home because of insecurities, and so they prefer to get their daughters married off. Now this question of security insecurity needs to be tackled, and there should be some consciousness raising within the villages by creation of adolescent peer groups, and boys also need to be incorporated in this, whereby this question of security is taken up. I think you can always make out that in front of the schools, very often girls cannot go to the school, that during the that on the path they have insecurities, so many girls drop out. So these things need to be taken
Right.
up. And
Hello.
third thing that I feel is, we need to know about our body, we need to know about our choices and reproductive choices, because we have to agree that this is a period, because if we don't give them informed choice, then the next thing that would happen is, we cannot stop internet, which is a place where you have free flow information, and very often this information are wrong information, and we get into the trap, and young girls, boys, they get into the trap, and very often they end up paying their entire life for it, for something that they have committed out of lack of knowledge. So I think these are the things that we should do. And last
Yes.
thing is convergence of programs and incentivizing this. That if you are not marrying at a young age, if you are sending or getting your child married at 21, then you get some incentives. So I think that would make a difference. People would
Yeah,
feel
these
good.
are, yeah, valuable, I think, suggestions. As you rightly say, educational opportunities, skill development, vocational opportunities, awareness about reproductive health and reproductive process, and incentivization have to accompany the implementation of this proposal for raising the marriages. Then this conventional, and also the providing security, and a very important point, to the girls who are at work or at home, so that this whole uh, myth of daughters being burdens on parents, and how to unburden sooner than later, this whole cultural construct of daughters being burdens on the family, it undergoes.
I think Professor Tulakia's net is not there.
I think so.
So you can continue, I guess. That is better.
All right, Pranam. Before we end with, or by the time Sir joins us, only the suitable age that is for the marriage as per the sociological understanding that we have seen. So few of the points are there. Rather than getting into detail, I'll be just making a point that is very first point that we consider sociologically as a suitable age is a person should be mature. So in a maturity, what they have mentioned about the chronological maturity, then they have mentioned about the physical maturity, they have mentioned about the mental maturity, about the emotional maturity and social maturity. If they are mature, that is the very first point. These five maturity should be there for a person to get married. Second point that is being shown is the role preparation, which normally this report is missing. Are they actually ready for the role preparation that a female have to play when she is going to enter into the new house? So is she prepared for that? What she has seen, if she would have seen only her parents as a couple, husband and wife, she is going to consider that this is how the relation works. But at the age of 18 she is going to have that only, but by the age of 21 she may get into connection with many of the other couples and she will be able to understand sometime the marriage works, sometimes the relation doesn't work, how to behave in those situations. That is the second point, that is role preparation. The third point that I can see is the uh, for suitable age is circumstantial readiness. That means if you are studying and you got married, you are going to prioritize any one thing. So either you are going to compromise your wife or your family or otherwise your studies. So are you circumstantially prepared or not? Fourth point will be the ability to adjust in a new environment. Wherever the woman is going in a patriarchal society or in a matriarchal society, a man is going, they have to be prepared with regard to the new ideologies that they have to accept. Because the Henry Man, when he speaks about the definition of a kinship, currently when we speak kinship, kinship is a blood relation, marriage relation, or by adoption. But earlier, it was by ideologies. You accept the ideology of some of the tribe, and you will be considered to be the kinship of that particular tribe. So that is about the adjustment. The fifth is the sex gratification instinct and the reproductive age, which is very, very important because after puberty, you may have the sex instinct, but that is not a right age for a marriage, and especially for the reproductive age, because it is being considered after the puberty, at least for 5 to 6 years, you have to give to a woman so that her bone density and everything will be perfect. So none of the other malnutrition will be there in the mother. You will be able to control the maternal mortality rate as well as the infant mortality rate. The sixth point is age of retirement is also very important, because if you delay it, then you are going to get very less time. So you should not delay it. And all these points for the suitable age are being mentioned by Professor G.S. Gurye around 5 decades back, where he mentioned that 21 is the right age for male and a female. So I think based on that sociological understanding, we are going right.
Thank you, Viren. Very important points. Corroborating what Professor Chakrabarti said. Now we go for very brief interactive session. Ashish has raised some questions. I see this in the chat box. Ashish, you might just speak out rather than me reading it. And these questions are, I think, addressed to Professor Chakrabarti.
Yes,
Ashish,
yes.
you
Only
can
one
unmute.
is there.
Yeah.
He's right. Actually, Ashish, I have read your question. That is, you want to know that without, rightly he said that without bringing the relevant changes, that education, access to education, transportation of issues, also insecurities and hygiene, that now how do I actually, instead of looking at revising the marriage and the stereotypical mindset, just raising the age of marriage, will it help? Now raising the marriage, will it help or not help? See, when there was a child marriage prohibition act going on, still we need to know, understand that child marriage is, if you look at, say for example, when we have fever, so fever is a reflection of some inner disease that you have, inner problem that you have, and it is just a outside reflection. So similarly, child marriage should also be looked at this way, that it is the reason is something very deeply entrenched reasons. And you are right that instead of making changes in the marriage, now the question is what kind of changes. So if you look at the laws are there, but then access to them and also the willingness to access, that is also there. So very often women remain in abusive marriages. If you see that I just talked about the Marriage Prohibition Act, Child Marriage Prohibition Act 2006, about the report. In that report, it had come out as it was reported by the grassroots level organizations, and that is also something that the grassroots level organizations have pointed out. In fact, from your that is from the state of Gujarat, that they do not want this. They feel that it is important to rather look into the other sides, and breaking the stereotypes. It is essential, but it is as I have always maintained, I still maintain that raising the age of marriage is definitely one of the positive steps which can help the respondents, or help the children, or help the girls to at least bargain for their rights, and also get some space or pressurize. Now the question is, we need to talk about the structural inequalities, and the structural inequalities lie in our economic position, our access to education, our insecurities, which are often gendered insecurities, which we need to understand. As you rightly, one of the issue that you have raised is that about that sanitation and hygiene. Now that is of course a part of the gender insecurity that we have. Now these issues need to be addressed, and the question is, how do we address it? Not just talking about this is just one way which we can use it to get our things done, by bargaining for the other things that you have raised. So I would rather use it as a road to my bargaining, that is more and more bargaining and pressurizing the government, that if you want this thing to be implemented, so better also take up these issues which can help us bring in a change.
Thank you, Professor Ankita. There is also a question raised by Ritika, but I think it has already been answered by both the panelists, that whether it is going to impact the ground level situation in terms of child marriages. There is a third question from Mohammad Ali Irfan. Don't you think that the raise of age for marriage increases the number of illegal relationships between boys and girls, and in many cases increase in the sexual harassment and crimes in society? Yes, this is one major concern, that it might lead to what we call premarital, the incidence of premarital sex increasing, and secondly, crimes against women increasing. Dr. Virendra first, then Professor Ranjita. Yes.
First things are, as mentioned by Muhammad Ali, that it will be illegal sexual relations. So we have to understand it is not the illegal sexual, because after 18, as I said, the consent is already there. So with that consent, they can have those relations. So it won't be illegal. Once a person is adult, the definition of adult is different, a definition of mature is different, a definition of a child is different. So when a person is adult, they have their consent. By that consent, they can go for their relations, and there is no problem at all in it. So the question of illegal relations won't be there. Secondly, this report very clearly mentions, the report recommend an increase in the age from 18 to 21, but in a phased manner. So it is going to answer all the questions with regard to different states. It is going to be in a phased manner, and it is not going to be implemented directly. This is what the report is recommending. And currently there is no legislation, only the report which is being seen. And based on the report, we are considering this legislation is going to come in. Also, when I look at this particular report, majorly we were considering earlier studies for the purpose of a review, and see they are from the urban areas. But this particular report, they have received it from 16 universities across country. They have received this report from the 15 NGOs to reach to the far-flung areas and marginalized communities also. Feedback has been taken from all religions as well as rural and urban areas equally. So they have taken all these feedbacks. They know what kind of a challenges are going to be there, and very clearly this particular point is being mentioned that age of a marriage is actually being decided based on the first delivery should be at the age of 21. What has been mentioned, the task force has said the age of a woman at a time of her first childbirth should be 21 years. The report says evidence shows that the delay in a marriage has a positive economic, social, health effects on the family, women, child, and society at a large. So if we'll consider that before that, if they are going to get into the sexual relations, so that is perfectly all right. Society is moving over there. We already have live-in relation, as I mentioned, and these points are taken into consideration majorly whenever the report is being discussed. It is being considered to be Jaya Jaitli's report. We have to also see who are the members in this particular committee. So with Jaya Jaitli, it is Niti Aayog, member from the health, that is VK Paul. Then other legislative member, Najma Akhtar, Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia. Then Vasundha Khatam, former Vice Chancellor of SNDP Women's University, Mumbai. Then Gujarat-based gynecologist Dipti Shah. So they have taken into consideration all such kind of questions, and based on that, they have given this particular report.
Thank you, Virendra. Now, Dr. Ranjitra, I would like to reflect you not so much on the premarital sex, but on possibility of increase in sexual crimes against women that has been raised.
Yes, there is a possibility. That's why I say that there should be more informed kind of thing. And I do not know how do I look at it, because in the month of October, there was an incident, and this is, you may look at it from both sides. That is what I was talking about, this internet and the free flow of information, which also gives a lot of misinformation and problems also. In a state in India, 3 children were arrested, and the children's age were from 8 to 11, and they were accused of murdering a girl child of 6-year age. And the reason was that these 3 children, these 3 boys, their mobiles had a lot of pornographic content, and they were habitual viewers of this, and then they wanted this girl to do it, or wanted her to do some kind of an act, which she refused, and she was stoned to death. Now, once these 3 boys were arrested, now these 3 children, I don't know, and their background was that they were from villages, and their parents were daily wage earners. They got hold of this smartphone, and they also had free internet, and through this internet they somehow went into these sites, and this happened. So if you see this, then we are actually facing a very, very difficult time, and due to this pandemic, and of course due to this free flow of information without any regulation, so very often many things enter our homes which we are not aware of about, and very often we cannot control. Although when you look at the UNICEF's conditions about child rights, they say that with regard to this report on this online thing, education and all, online gaming, the UNICEF has mentioned that it is the duty of the parents to provide the checks. Now, we do not know how to provide the checks, looking at this whole situation. So definitely these crimes, whether it is you have the age of marriage at 21 or you have it low, this would be there probably. But then the point is, we need to kind of generate some awareness campaigns and instill a kind of a value-based education, whereby the citizens, our future citizens, are more concerned about their own potential. Say, for example, I remember that very often the various schools, now I realize that why do they ask the children that they should go for sports. Now, once you go for sports, or you are trying to develop yourself professionally, then, or you are always trying to hone your skills, so probably your attention to certain things shift. So I would rather suggest that how we can create more spaces whereby the young people have feel more attracted to, and they are using their energy there rather than spending it elsewhere. Now, when you look at this question of crimes, I do not know, because these crimes were also earlier there. And if you go, there are a lot of news reports which say, in fact, NCRB data, if you see that there has been a growing number of rate of
Yes.
crime, and very often it is said that reporting is more. Earlier there was under reporting, now you have more reporting. But with this, I have I don't find any kind of thing. It would remain as it is. Probably, if we have to think it otherwise.
Thank you so much, Professor Ranjita. And there is also a comment from Deep Sarkar, and we just take it as a comment that if girls are working and financially independent, parents are less likely to marry them off early. Fair enough. We have already exceeded the proposed time limit for this online discussion. But let me say, it was indeed very, very interesting. And a lot of new issues have been thrown up, which requires further deliberation and analysis, which is how it always is when it comes to complex socio-political issues. Thank you very much, Professor Anjita Chakrabarti and Dr. Virendra Singh, for joining this online discussion. On behalf of Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute as well as the Department of Political Science, I convey my sincere gratitude to both of you and look forward to your continued participation in similar engagements in future. Thank you so much, and thanks also to all the participants who joined in. Have a nice day. Good night.
Thank you.